Every time what's happened is that these parties have been captured by the elite, and that's the name of your show as well, right? So it's elite capture, these extremely powerful parasitic elites that control the political economy of Pakistan. They're able to infiltrate or penetrate and then control different political leaders and their parties.
Hello, everybody. This is Attorney Shayan with the Elite Capture Podcast. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Ammar John from Lahore. Ammar, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to be here, Shayan.
Thank you. And I know you have some engagements in a half hour, so we're going to keep it tight. I'm going to ask you a bunch of, imagine like you're on Hard Talk BBC, okay? I'm just going to fire questions at you and interrupt you like 50,000 times.
Sure.
Okay, Ammar, first of all, just give us a little bit of your background. A lot of people in the States and the diaspora who might have heard about you but don't know exactly your background regarding your credentials. Can you talk a little bit about your education?
Well, I studied A-levels in Lahore, so I finished my high school in Lahore, and after that I moved to Texas. So I was at UT Austin, University of Texas. And then for my master's, I went to University of Chicago, and then I did my PhD in history from the University of Cambridge. And then I returned to Pakistan with certain ideals that I'm hoping to stay true to even today, which was to develop a people's movement. And in my particular case, I was very interested in challenging the kind of education system that students are given in Pakistan. So, one of the things that I thought that I had the privilege of engaging with was critical thinking. I mean, we could, in the US or in the UK, criticize these countries, these governments. We could explore South Asian history in a way that we weren't able to in Pakistan. How Pakistan studies is full of censorships when you're growing up. So there's a lot that gets cut out. And that's why I decided to move back to Pakistan and join a public sector university. So that was another thing that I wanted to do. I didn't want to teach at LUMS because most of the students at LUMS are elite, and usually they get the best professors who are qualified from abroad. So I started teaching in government college, later Punjab University, and then FC College. And as you may know, as some of the people may know as well, that I got into trouble with the administrations and later with the state. Deep state thought that I was trying to incite a rebellion, that I was trying to undermine the foundations of Pakistan, undermine the ideology of Pakistan, just because I was critical of the role of the deep state, of the military.
There's a long history of Pakistan in that anybody who criticizes it all of a sudden becomes a traitor, or there are too many red lines they don't want you to cross. Anyhow, let me talk to you about this. First of all, what did you study in Chicago? Economics?
No. This was the master's program in social sciences. So I had a scholarship, master's leading to PhD from HEC, the Higher Education Commission in Pakistan. So this master's program in social sciences basically was the eclectic program where we learn social theory, philosophy, history.
Okay, let's talk about this. So obviously all these things haven't really deterred you. You're going strong and you have a courageous group of people, young people like yourself who are doing many things. Talk about your new party. I believe you have started a party. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we've started a party called the Hukuk Party, and it stems out of our activism on university campuses. For the last 5-6 years, I've been engaged with some brilliant young minds who would have been cherished and nourished anywhere around the world, but in Pakistan, they were constantly hounded, and many of them even faced cases by the government because they were demanding student unions. This was in 2018 and 2019, and I saw these young people organize, and I was part of some of the study circles that these students were doing. And very quickly, when the state cracked down on these student activists, and I also faced a crackdown, we realized that we do not have a political vehicle for the middle class and for the working class to express its concerns. The mainstream parties were too rotten. The ruling party at the time, PTI, was not interested in popular movements. At that time, it was in bed with the establishment. Now, of course, it's fallen out of favor. And we thought we needed a platform where real bread and butter issues of people can be discussed. And we very quickly after the student movement, we moved into neighborhoods during COVID. And not only did we do solidarity work with rations and food stamps, but also we got involved in the question of infrastructure, which is clean drinking water, schools, hospitals in poor neighborhoods. And that's where we're working at even now.
Can you name some of the neighborhoods you guys have been working in? So because people know Lahore, I'm sure some Lahoris watch this, yeah.
So our main work is in Jumi Ammar Sadhu and Kanchi Ammar Sadhu, which is on Firozpur Road. We also have a base in Harbanspura, which is North Lahore. And then we have a very strong workers movement with us in Faisalabad, the trade union movement by the name of the Labour Commune, which arguably is the largest trade union movement right now in Pakistan. Trade unions generally are very weak in Pakistan, but it's probably the largest movement. And this interaction in all of these areas, these are mostly working class, extremely poor areas. Engaging with them has taught us how disenfranchised many of these people are and why we need new leadership emerging from these neighborhoods so that their concerns can be put into the media.
So let's go to the heart of the questions that I'm sure you've been asked a million times, and I want you to kind of tackle them again, if you don't mind. How so many of Pakistanis don't think that anyone from the working class or the common people can come up, meaning they're saying that, you know, most Pakistanis believe that parties are so entrenched in the system, in the larger establishment, that you can never take them out. Basically, you have to be a part of that, and a new party cannot ever take control. So how do you go about convincing them or persuading them that there is hope?
I don't blame people for thinking that way because we've seen so many disappointments in Pakistan over the last, if you look at the last 50, 55 years, there have been many new parties that have emerged. People's Party was a new party in the late 60s, early 70s. PTI is the latest party that has made it to the mainstream. Then even ANP and MQM, these are all parties that have been formed in the last 40, 50 years. Every time what's happened is that these parties have been captured by the elite. And that's the name of your show as well, right? So it's elite captured, these extremely powerful parasitic elites that control the political economy of Pakistan. They're able to infiltrate or penetrate and then control different political leaders and their parties. And one of the reasons why these parties have been so prone to being manipulated by the elites is that one, they did not have an ideological orientation, and two, they did not have internal democracy. Those are two key things, I think, which mean that political parties eventually get derailed, and those are the lessons that we have to learn. And we have to, one, have an ideology, and we claim we're on the left and we stand with workers, students, farmers and women. And second, our leadership is coming from the grassroots. So if a leader betrays, then the party kicks out that leader, and that's the way it should be.
So basically, you're talking about two things. One, they don't have ideological connections to anything, so they can become lotas very easily, right? They go from one party to another to another. That's what we saw with PTI, all those people abandoning the rats from a sinking ship, right? Then the second thing, if I'm to understand you correctly, you're saying that because of lack of ideology, they can be, maybe I wasn't clear on your second point. Can you repeat that?
It's democracy, internal democracy.
Internal, meaning primaries, within parties not giving tickets
Absolutely.
Based on money or all that, which I believe Imran Khan promised but did not deliver. He said he was going to have primary system, right?
Absolutely.
Like we have in the United States. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is the reason why the PTI is melting away right now. There's a lot of popular support from Imran Khan on the street in Pakistan, but the political leadership that eventually took over PTI were not even PTI workers. They were parachuters. They are parachuted into the party. And the original committed ideological worker of the PTI was sidelined. And that's because of big money. That's because of the tendency of political leaders to prefer electables to grassroots activists.
So you don't think there's an inherent fundamentals that are missing in Pakistani democratic process, which are causing this? This is coming from the parties themselves. So a party like yours can actually make a difference and not be co-opted?
No, I think there's also a structural problem. Political parties emerge from within the social space in which they're operating. And what is this social space? You have deep feudal ties in the countryside. In the cities, you don't have dynamic elites, you don't have industrial elites that are thinking about expanding the productive base of the economy. You have elites who want to be connected with the state, and through those monopolies, through rent seeking, they want to produce their wealth. And then you have the military establishment, of course, that is the final sovereign in the key decisions of the country. And this entire pyramid is of power is there. This architecture of power is there, while millions of young people with degrees no longer have jobs, which is why I think the current status quo, this particular configuration of power is actually very unstable. Even if it appears to be stable, eternal, it's very unstable and it will fall apart. And we
Okay,
should
so
be
how will your party be different? Meaning, what can you do? What can your party do to chip away at the system? If people were to be given hope, what would you guys do differently?
Well, we are taking our inspiration from different eclectic elements of the left in history. So, for example, in China, we think it was very important that the Chinese Revolution ended feudalism in China and opened the possibility of a productive base. Similarly, we're seeing in Latin America where these mass coalitions of workers, farmers, middle class people, professionals, students, women, feminists, all of them are coming together to build an alternative. And what we saw in Brazil recently, particularly with Lula da Silva against Bolsonaro. I mean, Bolsonaro was one of the scariest figures on the planet. And who defeated Bolsonaro? It was the grassroots movements, the movements from the ground that coalesced around a political organization. And then they brought forth their leader, Lula da Silva, who defeated him. Similarly,
but those countries have presidential systems, Ammar. I mean, you're dealing with a parliamentary form of government. So the more the seats, the more the power, right? So let's talk about you running for office. You are running as a candidate from your party, correct? But what are you running for, and what's your district?
I'm running for MPA. So this is a member of the Provincial Assembly of Punjab from Lahore.
Do you have a website?
And it's PP,
at this point
PP15. I'm very happy to share the website with friends in New Jersey and elsewhere. It's PP159. That's the name of the constituency. And it is one of the poorest areas in Lahore. It's a working class neighborhood. This is the area where the initial industrialization happened in Lahore. Workers from across Punjab arrived and worked in these factories. And yet, after producing all the wealth of Lahore and the wealth of Punjab, if you go there, you'll be shocked. Not only is it one of the most polluted areas in Lahore, but also the infrastructure is terrible. Over the last 40 years, every MPA or MNA who's been elected from this area has built his own housing society, but has not created one new public school in this entire constituency. Similarly, the water in this area, it's 90% contaminated. 90% of the water is contaminated, and by contamination, I mean there's lead and there's sewage. There's sewage water mix. So people, all the buzurgs, all the elderly in the area, they complain all the time that this water is not good enough for wuzu. And that's where we're basing our campaign upon. We're basing it on the right to water, the right to education, and the right to housing, because many of the people here, despite laboring their entire life, they cannot even dream to have to own a home, because there's not been a single public housing project in Lahore since the 70s.
So meaning rent controlled or for the working class, so you can actually buy it for a reasonable price. Is that what that would be?
Absolutely.
Okay, what about health? I know your party, if I remember correctly, has started a clinic in that area as well. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we've been working in this area for the last many years now, and I was teaching there in some schools as well. And for the last 2 years, we've been doing medical camps. So free medical camps with doctors. One of our star doctors is Dr. Alia Haider, who's a brilliant activist and a brilliant doctor. And she's conducted, we were estimating the other day, about over 600 medical camps over the last 4 years across Pakistan. So she's really, one of those people's doctors in the country. And she was able to point out very early on that the main problem in the area is the water. And we campaigned around water, and we've done a major sit-in in front of the district commissioner's office as well. But though to actually have new pipelines installed would be a long-term project. We have to first get into the parliament to do that. But the situation is so desperate and the crisis is so urgent that we thought we have to do something right away. And after much debate and discussion, we decided we will set up pop-up clinics in the area. We spoke to some friends in the US, some very kind-hearted doctors who agreed to help us set it up. And now we have set up one clinic with an ultrasound machine and an ECG machine and almost free medicine, subsidized medicine. We did our opening for that clinic about 2 weeks ago. And now we're setting up a second clinic in the same constituency on the 6th of August. And we plan to set up 2 more clinics over the next 1 month.
And how can people contribute to that? What is your setup? How can people contribute to your clinic?
I will share the links with you. That we have Dr. Salman Malik in the US who's collecting the funds, and he's sending it to the Action Research Collective, which is the organization that is overseeing pulse clinics. And it's an organization. I'm on the board of governors as well. Kaisa Bengali, Dr. Kaisa Bengali, who's a very famous and popular economist. He's on the board of governors. Professor Noshin Zaidi, who's the professor, the head of the cancer center at Punjab University, she's on it. And Professor Amin Lutfi, who's a professor at LUMS, he's on the board as well. So there's a team of professors, academics who are overseeing this project. And we are requesting people to donate $50 per month to the cause. And if we can have about 200 people across the US giving $50 a month, we will be able to sustain these clinics without any problem.
Do you know how many donors you have right now? Happen to know or no?
We have about 64.
Okay, wonderful.
That's the
okay. Now, without getting, I know your time is limited, but also just it's such a, quagmire of all kinds of mess that's going on in Pakistan. People would like to know, you're obviously educated in the West. There's so many others that have, that might have gone back and trying to serve just like you are. People outside, when we see, and from our perspective, it just seems like it's something that's not salvageable sometimes, or at least nowadays, it definitely seems like. Is Pakistan still a viable hybrid democratic structure? Does it seem like it's 80-20 now, meaning 80 establishment and military and 20, if there's any space for democracy left?
I mean, I think your analysis is correct. It's a very bleak situation. It's a gloomy situation, but it's been gloomy for a very long time. I mean, we have to hope against hope. It's a way of life in Pakistan. You don't give up, you remain resilient, you keep hoping, you keep fighting. Because eventually it is a country of 230 million people. And if everybody gives up, it would be a catastrophe which would make Syria look like a picnic. It's also a nuclear armed country. It has one of the most young populations on the planet. And people are, of course, very upset, very angry, but people are also thinking of ways out. And some people, of course, are dying to get out, which is what we saw in the recent.
But that's always been the case everywhere, right? I mean, Ammar, I hear that all the time, but most people don't leave. And secondly, it's just not possible, first of all. And secondly, people leave from Turkey. Turkey is a great country. People leaving from there too, So I find that.
It is difficult. The situation is difficult. I'm not going to lie, but I mean, countries have had it worse. I mean, look at China. China in 1949 was not a country you and I would have liked to live, even from like leaving Lahore or Karachi. Today's Lahore and Karachi are much more stable. This was a country ravaged by civil war, by Japanese colonialism, by famine, all kinds of things that, they've transformed into, at least in terms of the economy, it's become a much bigger country. There are all kinds of other problems that we can talk about. Similarly, many other countries you look at Europe 60, 70, 80 years ago. I mean, Europe was totally under the spell of
Impoverished.
fascism. How
Yeah.
how disappointing that would have been if we were
Yeah.
in like Vichy
There,
France
there
back.
are, Amar, there are a lot of, and I'm not trying to argue with you, but there are so many cultural differences too. Though one of the problems we have is obviously, a problem of just obviously what happened in Afghanistan, jihad, and all that stuff. Talibanization, whatever you want to call it, right? Europe did not have that issue. It went through a secular
It did
reformation. But
not,
but look,
but Europe.
yeah, go ahead.
But Europe did not have the Taliban problem, but Europe had the fascism problem, which was a very destructive force. I mean, if you were
It still does.
yes, and imagine someone like Hitler controlling most of Europe, and if you're a European citizen, that's why I think reading that kind of history really it inspires, should inspire many of us, because um, there were some people who kept believing that Hitler can be defeated, Mussolini can be defeated, Franco can be defeated. And these were people whom the entire world was scared of. Or even in our own history, when people here were resisting the British, when people were trying to fight the Viceroy was much more powerful than our generals, for example. But people fought back, people resisted, and India did become, in whatever form, the first country that got independence. So one lesson is that things do change. Like nothing is eternal. Misery is not eternal, nor is glory eternal. And change is part of the dialectics of history, and we must be. It's really up to us how we can give direction to that change. I think it's more utopian to think that the world will stay the way it is. It is more realistic and pragmatic to think it will transform radically in the next few years, and it's up to us to give it orientation.
So do you think Pakistan is headed in the right direction? I know that's a loaded question, but if you were to look at the totality of circumstances with young people like yourself, able people like yourself back in Pakistan, resisting, so to speak, or pushing forward, do you think, because you're on the ground, so would you say Pakistan still has a great ability to go in the right direction because
I
of
think
groups?
so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we're in a great position, but I do think we have a lot of potential. As I said, we have a young population which can be an asset. This is a huge labor force that can be put to a lot of productive use. One of the problems is that our economy is, as I said, it's a frontier state, so it's very rent-seeking. You have feudals, you have real estate mafias, you have military, and that's sucking away our resources. Now imagine if there's a political force that can fight and change this structure and force the state to actually invest in productive capital, industries where there's value addition, the digital world, AI, all kinds of other things in which Pakistani young people are already interested and doing actually remarkably well in certain cases without any government support. So, young people are always, because they have so much creativity, they're always looking for ways out. We need a state, we need a government that does not use its power to subsidize the elites. At this moment, we have a state which is, according to UNDP, it is giving an annual subsidy of $17.4 billion to the elites. $17.4 billion. How many dollars were we dying for to get from the IMF? 3 billion. And 17.4 billion we just hand out to our elites, which includes not only debt write-offs and lower taxes, but also something like this scandalous news that I was reading a few days ago, that Gymkhana Club, which is this club for the elites in Lahore, it pays how much in tax per annum? 5,000 rupees.
What?
5,000 rupees, and who's going to carry the burden of these luxuries of the elite? It's the children of the poor. It's the salaried classes. And Express Tribune had this story 3 days ago that the salaried classes in Pakistan, they paid over 200% more in tax than the elites. So you see, there's potential if you don't do stupid stuff like that, and you transform the economy into a productive economy. If a salaried person knows that he or she, when they're working hard, in 10, 15 years, they can own a business, they can own a house, there's potential for growth for them, their families, their children. Then we're not in that bad a situation. But that would require a fight, and that's why we're doing it.
My time is almost up, so I'm going to ask you three quick reactions. I want to know your. Dr. Taimur was on the Pakistani Experience a couple of days ago. I was listening to him, and he was talking about a proportional system of government, which in most European countries exists, obviously. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that something, and I'll just give you all three and let me get your reaction on proportionality system in government, proportional representation rather, sorry. And want your comment on term limits, because one of the ways to get people out of dynastic politics is to have term limits. And third, I would want to know, and I could be incorrect about this, but my understanding is that Pakistan has quotas for minorities in which there are elections held for minorities. But quotas for women, there are no elections held, they're appointed. Is that accurate?
No, there's quotas for both. There are no elections, right?
For both, even minority, there are no elections?
No.
So why is that the case? Now, it's okay, I have no problem with quotas, but don't you think that those seats should be elected and those people should be real representatives of the women and the minority?
I agree with you on point 1 and point 3. I think proportional representation would be way better because it allows new parties to enter. This is something that happens in Greece all the time, that when people are voting for a small party, they don't think they're wasting their vote, because if they hit about 3%, then they'll have some
they get a seat. They get one seat, or is that a seat, Ammar? If you get 3% of the votes?
Yes, beyond 3%, you start getting seats, and then it depends on what the distribution of the vote is, and they have this complex system, but it makes sense because then a small party can say, well, this is our area, we're working in it. And if we have 5 such areas, we will have representation in the parliament. The first past the post is difficult because you have these dynastic politicians who already have a vote bank of 20, 25,000, and you need 35,000 to win. So if someone is starting off with that kind of a vote, the newcomers will always be seen as these outsiders, this almost impossible candidates, something that's happening to Cornel West, for example, or it happens to third-party candidates in the US, that people, even if people's views align with those candidates, they would most likely not vote for them.
Yeah, I mean, Ralph Nader would be the biggest example, I would think. That was the biggest disruptor. Yeah.
In terms of quotas, I think I completely agree with you. There should be direct elections. And there is a rule that about 1% of the 1 or 2% of the seats should be given to women. I think that should be increased in the direct elections. So I think that it's important to have women candidates in direct elections, not just on women's seats, but also on general seats. And there are many women who contest, but I think there should be a quota for every party, a higher quota that this number of seats you have to give to women in the general election, so that more women become visible. In terms of term limits, the history in Pakistan is a bit complicated, because the term limits, every time they've been introduced in Pakistan, they've been done by the establishment to break up political parties. Basically to deny them leadership, to stop their leaders from becoming prime ministers. It was targeted against Benazir Bhutto, it was targeted against Nawaz Sharif. Now they're using new ways to target Imran Khan. The aim is always to prevent a popular leader from coming to power. The other problem with term limits is that it's often good to have some very experienced parliamentarians in there, because an ideal parliament would be one in which you have young people with new ideas and old people who understand the business of the parliament, because lawmaking is a slightly, there are almost issues involved.
But Ammar, people are living longer than they used to, obviously, especially in the West. I'm sure in Pakistan, obviously, the age has gone up as well. And secondly, we're not talking about unreasonable term limits. We're talking about reasonable term limits. You know, we're not talking about 2 terms. We're talking about 10 terms, right? Because I mean, or 8 terms. I
something
mean, we're
like
talking,
that.
yeah, yeah,
Something like that could work. Like maybe 4 terms,
yeah,
5 terms, like 20, 25 years in parliament.
yeah.
Uh, but I think
I was gonna,
if
yeah,
the proportional representation thing happens and the direct elections for quotas, that in itself would open up space for a lot of young people
so
and new
so
parties.
last point, and I want your comment on this. So maybe a lot of people don't realize, I'm sure you do, but in the US, they used to have single member districts, meaning you used to be elected through the whole city if you're running for something, right? And people went to court and asked for everything used to be at large, meaning you ran for, if you were going to be a city council member, you ran from the whole city could vote for you. So minorities went to court and said, look, here's the deal. We can never win any election because the whole majority of the city is white, right? Here we're talking about we can win any elections because majority of the people who have the hold or the money are concentrated at the top. So in order to have a proportional representation system or something that breaks it down so that people, either they're minorities or economic minorities, are able to get some power, is that something we would have to do through constitutional revisions or could be done through courts in Pakistan?
Partly constitutional revision. There could be some battles in court, but my own belief is that eventually it will have to be a political battle. Nobody will give up their privilege easily in Pakistan. There will have to be mass mobilization. There'll have to be confrontation. Land reforms, for example, our democracy without land reforms is a joke. The amount of land that the landed elites in rural areas have, it's not just that they have land, it also means that everybody is their worker, everybody is indebted to them. They are the ones giving credit in the area, they're the ones who control the police stations. Who will contest them? Except for another feudal who is in confrontation, and they change parties all the time, but they call electables, they remain the same. And this is now happening in urban areas as well with the real estate tycoons. Even the constituency where I'm contesting, the guy against me is absolutely loaded. He has murder charges against him. He has, he's part of the land mafia, and he's controlling the political economy of Lahore. And these, unless you end this grotesque form of inequality, elections for the middle classes will remain a difficulty. Now, there's only one way to do it without coming to power, which is to organize the people. Aam Aadmi Party has done it in India. They've defeated BJP and Congress in Punjab. Before that, they defeated them in Delhi. And they really brought these new people in with new, fresh ideas. And now they have 3 state governments. So it's not impossible. And Indian bourgeoisie has more money, more power, and more intelligence than the Pakistani one. So if they can be defeated, then it's possible to win here as well.
Okay, I lied. This is my last question. All right. You wear many hats. You're a politician, you're a activist, you're obviously in public service, you're a professor. How do you see yourself? How do you prefer to see yourself?
My ideal, if I were given a choice, would be to be a public educator, between a public intellectual and someone who raises questions of public importance, a teacher, which is why I went into teaching. And the difficulty in Pakistan is that universities are not sites for that kind of pedagogical work, that kind of critical questioning. And I was, as you know, fired from universities, and there were cases registered against me for being anti-Pakistan, stuff like that. Whereas I came back to Pakistan to serve Pakistan. And those who were charging me for that were not charging me because they thought I was actually anti-Pakistan. It's because they wanted to defend their DHAs and their fertilizers and ASCII banks and God knows.
Isn't it true they wanted you to leave? They want you to leave the country.
Yes, they wanted me to leave, and I decided I'll stay because eventually this is our country. We can't always be subjugated. We can't always live in shame and humiliation and silence. We can't run away from it all the time. Someone at some point will have to face this reality that this country, this land that our ancestors have built, it's being destroyed, it's being hollowed out by this parasitic elite that has no loyalty to the people of this land, that has no loyalty to even the state, because they have hollowed out the state. They have loyalty to money, big business, to international actors, to geopolitics, and yet they have conferred upon them the right to decide who is a patriot and who is a traitor. And this is no way to live a life, to accept this kind of a tyrannical and absurd situation. So I think we have decided to rebel against it. We've decided to fight against it. And even if we are not the ones who actually bring this victory, everybody plays their part. There are a lot of people like me, better than me, who are thinking along those lines. And when the rivers flow, eventually they meet somewhere and they form the sea. So I think we will see a sea well of support across Pakistan for ideas that are challenging the status quo. The people already know this status quo is dead. There's no vibrancy, nobody is defending it, nobody is supporting it. We just need those kids who can say the emperor is naked. And I think more and more kids are daring to do that. And this will not stop. And this will not stop till people get their rights and the dignity that the Constitution promises them, and that general principles of decency promise them. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because the situation is so unstable that no tyrant can capture or stabilize the situation for too long. They will have to give way to the people at some point.
Thank you, Ammar. And of course, you are a true patriot of Pakistan, and you demonstrate it with your actions every day. And, you live it. So thank you for your time. I'm going to let you off the hook. You've gone a few minutes over that you were supposed to. I apologize. I wasn't watching the clock. So I'm going to thank you again. And please provide the links, and I will, to everybody listening, I'll post the links for your campaign and for the clinic at the bottom of the video, so they can get more information. Thank you, Dr. Ammar Ali Jan. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Have a good rest of the evening.